If you're enjoying the Health Geeks Book Club podcast, we'd appreciate if you hit the subscribe button, leave a like, rating, or review, whichever your preferred podcatcher platform allows.
This edition of our podcast is brought to you by 360 Health and Well Balanced Nutrition.
Welcome to the Health Geeks Book Club podcast. Listen in as Kristen Norton and Eleanor Russell review all those great health and wellness books you've been wanting to read or you have read and want to talk about. Here's Kristen and Eleanor.
So we are back, and today talking about a very timely, it has been timely for the past 3 years, subject, immune health. And we have a book called Immune, A Journey into the Mysterious System That Keeps You Alive by Phillip Dettmer. And I just wanted to read this description. A gorgeously illustrated deep dive into the immune system that will forever change how you think about your body, from the creator of the popular science YouTube channel, Ursaga, in a nutshell. So a very pretty book with lots of fun pictures. So that excites me, the creative one over here. But I'll start with a confession, the way I started with a confession on the nosedive, is that I was excited about the nosedive topic, but the book was overwhelming for me and really hard to read. So I was really hesitant and waited to the last minute to start reading Immune. But I was so pleasantly surprised and ashamed that I didn't start sooner, because I am only halfway through the book. But it's so good.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about why you're having such a positive reaction. And I think, I get excited about context and background a little bit before I get into a book. This book was published in 2021.
Brand new.
It is hot off the press.
Yes.
And it has got some current information in there about what we've just been going through, the COVID. Experience. But the author, I think, is my new crush.
Oh.
I hate to say it. I'm enamored of this guy. He is a storyteller.
Yes.
And that's why I think you're having a good experience. He is able to communicate very difficult concepts in a way that regular people who haven't studied all this stuff can grasp.
Yes.
And so I said, who is this fellow? Well, he's not an English-speaking person. So this book is written in English, and it's absolutely readable, very readable.
Very.
His name is Phillip Dettmer, I believe is what you said. And when you read the blurb on the back of the jacket cover, they tell us that he dropped out of school, didn't finish high school. So here we're reading a book on a very complex subject, the immune system, by a kid that dropped out of high school. So I'm thinking, how does he do that? Well, it turns out he, somewhere in his life journey, bumped into a teacher who was able to connect with him and inspire him, and he flipped around. He went to the university, got degrees in history and some other discipline that was not biology. And
I think it was like information technology.
Something technical.
Informatics.
Yeah, well, that's what he developed. And during my teaching career, this concept of informatics came along, and it is such a helpful teaching tool because it streamlines an idea, puts it into like a chart form with nuggets of stuff you want to connect, and the visual allows you to see the connections. And he's developed this whole YouTube channel, which is the largest viewed science education YouTube channel out there. He has a team of people that do the artwork, and it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. And when you listen to him talk, you just are charmed. And he wears a NASA sweatshirt in many of his pictures. And when he's on his YouTube, he usually has that on. I wondered if he had any affiliation with NASA, and I didn't have time to pursue that, but I'm sure he loves NASA.
I did a quick internet search, and I wanted to learn more about him, and I couldn't find much more than what you've already shared. Mm-hmm. But I had a friend say, oh, yeah, I heard you're reading the Immune book, but I'm not so sure because I don't like to read anything that's not by someone who's studied that field or whatever. So I thought, Yeah, you're right. I wonder if it's going to be accurate.
Me too.
And so what do you think? Did you find anything that you're like, I don't know if he's on the right track there?
Like I said, I wish I'd had some of this material when I was teaching because I was amazed that somebody who hadn't been in the labs and studying and spending years on this could convey the ideas as the way I understand them to work. So that maybe I have a misunderstanding, but I didn't find, there was maybe a couple of places I would have done something a little different, but it wasn't big enough to stop and say, disregard all this. I really feel he's got it. And there's not a bibliography in this book, and I'm always like, why don't we have that in there? And
it's online.
Exactly. He said, because it's a book in print and it needs to be out here fast because everybody's talking about the immune system.
Right.
They do not know how it works. They're confused. They're hearing things that he wanted to provide a basis for understanding because he feels like if people understand and are informed, they can make better decisions. I'm totally on board with that idea.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you're being informed with accurate information, then you have a better chance of making an informed decision that you can live with and feel good about in retrospect. Because a lot of times we make decisions based on the information we have at the present. Then down the road, we learn something else and we may have regrets that why did I do that thing? Well, at the time you made the decision, you made the best decision you could make. It wasn't like you didn't process your information and then make a decision. You just didn't knee-jerk do something. And that's how I think I can sleep at night when I look back and see things I would do differently. If I know that at the time I made the decision, I actually thought about it, took information that was available to me, assimilated it, and decided, okay, this is the step I'm going to take. Well, then I couldn't have done anything else in that moment. Mm-hmm. There was nothing else, no other tools available to me.
Right.
20 years later, we have other tools. I would have made a different decision. But at that time, I couldn't. So now he talks in the interviews and also in the book about the reason people can't understand this complex system is because the people that are talking about it either one are trying to protect their intellectual information and make it inaccessible to others and therefore be able to charge for it. He didn't say that, but I would. And the other thing is they don't know how to explain it. They do a poor job of explaining it. And so when he says he's a storyteller, I go back to the 70s. If he'd been there with me in my graduate studies, I would have loved this guy. Because I was trying to be shepherded into how do you write scientifically. And I was coming from a lot of English and history and philosophy backgrounds as a, 5 through K, whatever they call the public education system. And so I would get all these red marks on my science reports in college. They're trying to format them for publication,
right,
saying, oh, this is too newsy. This is too popular. You have got to be more scientific. And then I can appreciate what they were trying to help me learn because in the scientific literature, when you're a professional and you need to access the latest research results, you've got to be able to do it quickly. So we have kind of templated that. There's a format. It's very, I know what I'm going to see in this section of the report. I know what I'm going to see in this section of the report. I expect to see this and this, and so you can go through it fast and say, okay, I can accept this, and then the conclusion, yes, I can accept that. No, I don't like it because I didn't like the methodology, and they told me. So, the structure of the science journals is very different than this book that we're reading. And this guy didn't just go out on his own and come up with this stuff. He talked to the people doing immune research.
Yes.
And so in his acknowledgments, which I absolutely loved his acknowledgments.
I did too. He has like 2 or 3 doctors that I'm like, oh, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in those conversations that he had with them.
Yeah. Yeah, he says, book bro fist to Professor Thomas Broker. Is that fun? And then he says, there's something about a high five in here. Oh, transatlantic high five to Professor so-and-so. And these are people that are doing extremely intricate work. And those are not the only scientists that he's worked with. And he said he went to the journals, he read them, and he read them at the speed of a first grader because he was trying to figure out what they were saying because their language, the way they've named things in this immune system, don't help you. And they confuse you.
Absolutely.
And
so I love that he, for us who we're not studying immunology, but we want to know about it.
I have.
I'm talking about me and the listeners.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and I struggled with it too.
And producer Tim.
Producer Tim. But he was able to simplify it and take out those complicated words, because I didn't have an immunology course, but in my science and biochem stuff in college, I would get overwhelmed with the amount of complicated words that I just couldn't understand what they were trying to say, because there were like 5 or 6 words that were brand new to me.
Yeah, major histocompatible complex molecule 1.
Yeah.
It's like, what's that mean?
And he's got a sense of humor about it in the book, too. He's like, well, this is an unfortunate name for this cell or this protein that does this. But but you say he's a storyteller. I think it's like plays out as a movie. Like, it's not just a story, but it's a very entertaining.
Oh, yeah.
One. Like, you get to know these different...
The personalities.
It's like you get to know characters. So now, like, a macrophage is a character in a movie to me, or in a war.
I was going to say, he does use that war analogy quite brutally.
He does.
Like, we're going to take you out and shoot you in the face. I mean, he says that over and over, and I'm going, oh, God, but that's what they're doing. They're killing cells.
It is.
And the
battleground.
Because we understand that. We understand what a battlefield is like. They're dead bodies. They're the aggressors. They're the weapons that we're going to use. It works. And so it's a series of short stories, in my estimation, all kind of patched together.
Yeah. Absolutely. But it kind of takes you on a journey to get to know your immune system, one story at a time, and he'll stop to maybe explain a concept in one short chapter and then go back. So he starts with a nail getting in your toe and how that injury, like what plays out in your immune system. And, to you, it's a mild annoyance, but, there's a full-on war going on inside your body that we often don't really appreciate. That, the world is ending. It's like a meteor is crashing into our immune system, and all this chaos is going on, and we're just like, now my foot hurts just a little. Yeah. So, and in the beginning, he really gets you to appreciate how many cells are in our body. And I love all the analogies to the sizes. So,
he's very effective in helping you comprehend big and little.
Right. So, let's see. If we were to compare, so the average human body is made from around 40 trillion cells.
A trillion, that's incomprehensible.
Trillion. So a truly impressive number. If we want your cells to be represented by individual people, then we need more than 100 times as many people as have lived in the 250,000-year-long history of humanity. So then he takes you through this visualization of what that would look like if cells were the size of people. And it's like covering the whole earth.
Yeah.
It's just a neat intro. I loved it.
Yeah, and he continues that through the book to help you get a sense of proportion. When he is talking about getting started with an extremely hard subject, he says the immune system seems to be designed to be opaque and hard to grasp. And we agree with that.
Yeah.
I complained a bunch about the language of immunity, and while that was hopefully mildly amusing to you in reality, it was not so much for me. To research this book, I had to read texts and academic papers with the speed of a first grader so I could keep up with what they tried to say. I can't imagine a field that would profit more from cleaning up its language and making an effort to become more palatable to the general public. Because in the end, immunology is truly one of the coolest topics ever. Science offers such a diverse array of topics that you can immerse yourself in, and in popular culture is often the seemingly large topics and fields that are most beloved. Space, for example, with its huge distances and black holes and gigantic stars, is an easy sell for documentation in popular science books. But while space is nice and all, it has nothing over biology. This is why I love this guy. Stars are dead clumps of burning plasma, and even the most complex and interesting one can't compete with the wonder and complexity of the simplest bacteria trying to escape a macrophage. And that's kind of how he sets that stage. And then he gives you the size proportions and goes over each cell. In the first part of the book, he says, meet your immune system. You know, what's in it? What are the cells? He introduces you to them. What are the empires and the kingdoms that they find themselves in? You know, the skin, the desert, or the mucosa, the swampland. And, you know, you get a picture in your head.
Absolutely. For anybody with a little bit of creativity, it's just so entertaining because he does a wonderful job of painting the picture for you, so it's easy to visualize it. And for me, it was helpful too because I have, you know, a background in science, so I was able to connect some of these and be like, oh, okay, that makes so much more sense. I wish I would have learned it in that light. But so yeah, I think you would love it if you do have some background in science. And even if you don't and are just interested in the body, it's fascinating and entertaining.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wondered that too. Since I have a pretty foundational understanding of this stuff, I loved it because it was like, yes, oh, this picture's great. Yes, there it is. Now that's a good way to tell somebody about that. Mm-hmm. And so it was this very pleasant feeling I was getting reading the book. But the artwork, you were mentioning the artwork in here that's very instructive. Mm-hmm. I thought that was interesting, too, because it's kind of primitive artwork. It's not got detail in it. It's like you could take a tempera brush and paint these pictures. They're not complex to look at either. So I'm reminded of teaching anatomy, and when you look in a human body, you know, you cut a body up. Well, you don't. Some people do. and you look inside and you say, well, where are those red blood vessels that they had in the diagram in the textbook? They're not red. You know, they're covered with fascia. You've got to find them. They all look sort of much alike. So in instruction, there are these atlases that you use to help you figure out where is Tim's gallbladder and where is
in a jar.
Gone. Yeah, and where is the spleen and so there are photographic atlases that look very much, they're true to detail. That's what you're going to see. And you still go, I don't see it. But then a guy like Netter, who is an illustrator, did an atlas and brings your eye to the most important structure that you're looking for. So in the section of his drawings on the brain or the GI system, there's some key structures that you want to pay attention to. His artwork takes your eye to it. And that's what this illustrator is doing as well. He's saying you don't need to pay attention to all that complexity of the DNA and how the nucleotides are assembled and how the condensation occurs. All he wants you to know is that when this cell erupts and spreads all of its DNA out there, this uncoiled DNA, it sets up this extracellular trap that glues these bacteria in it and then lets the other immune cells find them and eat them. And so in this act of self-sacrifice,
yes.
And that's what he focuses on, that story rather than the detail of the chemical reaction that's occurring to allow that to happen and how does the membrane separate, you know. He doesn't bother you with that. He says, here's the key point. Right. Now let's go to the next key point. And let's hook and that's what we do in an infographic. Key point to key point to key point. I got the big picture.
Right. To
now I can go back.
The main process, not
big
get
picture,
carried into the little details.
Yeah, quagmire that happens in so much of the instruction. And that's why this book, I think, for anyone that would like to know something, and you don't have to read for hours, you can read a page and a half, and then he stops and breaks and said, okay, think on that. Mm-hmm. Now pick it up. And I'll summarize it for you every so often.
Oh, I liked that at the end. So he's like at the end of a chapter or a section.
Yeah, or just somewhere he feels it's necessary.
So let's recap what we know so far. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And kind of on that note, too, I liked his footnotes. They make you aware if he is oversimplifying something, right? He's like, okay, I'm aware that there's more to this, but we can ignore that for now unless you're going to go study to be an immunologist. Or he'll give you some other fun facts that I was curious. Like, I wonder in the editing process if someone was like, this is too much, maybe you need to put that in a footnote. But I found myself like really reading those footnotes just as exciting.
I read every one of them.
Yeah. They're just as exciting as the rest of the book.
One of them, he was talking about, part of the immune response is the innate response, and the other part is the adaptive response. And he talks about allergies. And right now we're coming into the spring of a season here in the Northern Hemisphere.
Yikes.
A lot of tree pollen out there. A lot of people are sniffing and watery eyes. And so he goes and talks about allergic reactions. And then he talks about hypersensitive allergic reactions, of which he had one. But we don't find that out until we're in the footnotes. He said, this happened to me. I was in the ambulance. And I thought, oh, that's why he wrote the book. But it turns out that might be one of the reasons. But I did hear an interview with him. He also has had cancer. And so while he was undergoing the therapies for cancer, he was asking questions like crazy, like, how come? What's this do? How does that work? And part of the immune system surveils for our normal cells that become interrupted or injured and gets rid of them. So, because most of us have cancers, it's just they're being monitored by the immune system and removed. And it's when they get out of control or that immune system can't find those cells anymore, they can't do it. But so he has cancer and this allergic reaction, and I'm sure that influenced, I'm interested in this. And then when COVID comes along, the world is interested in this. And we need a better understanding as a general public.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm so thankful that he was passionate about that and put this together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the pictures are really fun and bright.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept going back to the most important players of the immune system. He's got just a page with all of the different characters. I call them characters because he does lay them out like characters. So that was just fun to put a picture to the character that you learn about and its job in the immune system.
Mm-hmm.
So,
at the very end of the book, he pulls all those together and has a very nice overview, which shows you the relationships of all of these things, whether these cells attack and kill something, whether they activate something, whether they're just communicating with each other, whether they're producing the antibodies that, help identify things that need to be removed, or whether they change into something else, because some of these cells don't stay the same. And, evolution is interesting because it conserves things that work. We find that if something enhances survival, then it gets shared with the next generation.
mm-hmm.
And so there are a lot of these elements in there that continue. And so my point there was, I don't know. Oh, yeah, that some of these pathways and mechanisms are conserved so that we do have an active immune system. There's no central authority in the immune system. Like, when we talk about the nervous system, the brain is the central area. The rest of it's just the wiring. But in this system, it's a whole bunch of teeny little things running around, and there's no real organization, and yet it all works.
Yeah, that's what's
It's
so
amazing.
fascinating about it. And he paints that picture in the beginning that they're dumb on their own, but when they work together with biology, this magic happens, and the intricacy that just happens because of science.
Yeah,
I'm just
or
like
nature.
geeking out over it. Yeah, nature.
Yeah, and there's no consensus, and they don't think, even though he does talk about them making decisions to go after things. He does admit, no, there's no rational thought here. It's all, just because it happens. They not, and then these little mechanisms or processes that have been conserved allow it to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's mind blowing, and it's like you said, it is a beautiful system. The other thing that I thought was interesting is that there are double mechanisms to prevent an overexpression of the immune response. There's checks and balances in there. Like, one cell can say, ooh, I see something, we need to call in the recruits. But then the recruits come and they say, I'm here, do I really need to go after this? And it takes another connection, and he calls it kissing. It's like a hook and a kiss, So it has some overtones in there that make it kind of fun to think about these cells communicating with each other, even though it's all chemical.
Well, you bring up such a great point, too, that our immune system is really important, but anytime it's activated, it has to be like a short-lived thing, and then
or it kills us.
or it kills us. because we have to have these pathways to shut down the immune system to stop it. Because if we're constantly having that inflammation, it's going to lead to disease and illness and symptoms. And he even puts that half of deaths can be related to ongoing inflammation.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things in my business at 360 Health, where we're making healthy happen. We try to help people reduce their stress levels and understand that if that's maintained and it goes over years, it will cause disease. The turning it off is an important thing. So there are things that you can do with your lifestyle, and he talks about this towards the end of the book, that lifestyle is the way to manage your immune system, because if you're stressing your body, it cannot recover, and the energy resources needed to maintain your immune system won't be available. And so you can contact me at 360health4u.com, and we can talk about this more.
Absolutely. And I am with Well Balanced Nutrition, where we help you create healthy habits around nutrition and lifestyle that are unique to you. If you'd like to talk with one of our dietitians, check out wellbalancednutrition.com, where you can sign up for a free clarity call where we'll talk about what your personal path to health and wellness might be.
And before we wrap this up, and I'm sure we may even talk about this in other episodes, he didn't reference one of the other books that we read by Jason Fung called The Cancer Code, but there was a connection for me in there, because when we talk about cancer, how it deregulates itself, Jason Fung said it was doing atavism, where cancer is reverting to a more primitive cell type that works as an individual rather than as a collaborative cell. And I love that idea in The Cancer Code. And this fellow also talks about the varying opinions about what is going on with cancers. What are those cells doing? Why are they changing, and why are they replicating and splitting off and going off on their own and setting up new territories? So I thought there was a place in there that he might have had some fun with that. And I don't know if he knows Jason or not, but I'd love to introduce them. Mm-hmm. And then another area he was talking about, what you were just saying about shutting down the immune system when we need to shut it down so it doesn't continue to destruct the civilian cells, as he calls them, which are our healthy cells. In homeostasis, which is the balancing act that the body does, there's a negative feedback loop. And so that's kind of what most of the system is working on. Like when there's too many of these chemicals coming from these bacteria, it's picked up. And then there's a response to bring that down, to keep it in check and balance. But there are some situations where the cells are turned on and they don't know how to turn off. And that would be a positive feedback loop where it goes until there's nothing else to consume. And then it turns itself off. And there's so many more things I could say about this book. I loved it.
I loved it too.
Okay.
Yeah. You guys should.
Do I need to stop talking?
Check it out and read it. No, there's one other thing that I was going to say while you were talking, and it left me.
Was it about turning the systems off for the civilian cells, or?
Nope. I don't know what it is. But
well, I know chit chat. We'll get back to it.
Alrighty. Thanks for listening.
And opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and are not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the express written consent of Kristen and Eleanor.